And we're back with another episode of Analyst Hour. I believe this is technically our fourth installment, but third episode. Mike, we have 1.5 weeks worth of games under our belt for this ASL season. I would like to take this episode kind of week by week and a half, and we don't need to go through every particular game, but if we can just sum up a lot of the big points, a lot of the headlines, a lot of the takeaways, from there, we'll segue into our projections for the rest of the season. And based off these 1.5 weeks that we have seen, what we think will happen, hello, Raymond, going forward for the remainder of the season. So, week one, if you need a little bit of a reminder, that was Billies versus Hatamotos, Hellkites versus Vikings, Pack versus Pride. We'll get to that. That deserves its own little segment. And then Spartans versus Galaxy. So I know we're going on a week ago, but what do you remember from that first week?
I think my biggest takeaway, or I guess my initial takeaway, was the immediate impact that rookies Jack Curtin, Alex Trotter had in their teams. There's been a thing going around for a while known as the ASL rookie curse, where almost every ASL rookie in their debut sucks in their first game, and in part because they're not prepared for the level of competition, how it all works. Just obviously pregame nerves. It's your first one, whether you're going to admit it or not. You're going to be
They
nervous,
think
but
it's like just any other pickup game.
yeah, it's just a wide combination of things, and clearly Jack and Alex had not caught wind of this rookie curse because they played like they've been in the league for years. Alex has shown that he could very well be the best two-way player in the draft pool. Jack, unfortunately for Alex Trottier, he's not going to win Rookie of the Year just because Jack Curtin also happens to be Rookie this year, and he's incredible. He did literally everything. I mean, he led his team in every single statistical category. So, yeah, the rookies were my immediate thing. Was we added, I forget who the other rookie is, but
Campbell
those
Prentice, George Camboris.
Campbell also had a great. We don't have enough big men who sit in the post, attack, don't like get rebounds, like kind of like traditional NBA centers. We don't have a lot of those in the league, and it's awesome that Campbell came and brought that to the league because there's not enough of them. So really, all three of them are just great additions to the league. And yeah, this season looks to be off to a great start.
You must not have heard me. George Camboris is the fourth rookie.
That is
Kind of rookie. Kind
all
of
right,
rookie.
Campbell and George. I'm sorry for snubbing you. I mean, it's clearly Trottier and Curtin's performance stood out more. But yeah, no, they both brought. I mean, George brought a lot of energy in both games. It's nice to add players in the draft pool with size in terms of Campbell and George because we really don't. Most of the size is amongst the captains. We have a lot of. No, I'm not going to say short kings, but we do lack size in the draft pool. So it's
Well,
great to
it's
have
guard
that.
heavy. It's guard heavy.
And they both and all of them, especially Campbell and George too. They all like. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Nunez just attempted to reach me.
Uh,
But they have great they're just great additions to the league with their attitude, their morale, what they bring to the league, what they bring to their teams. It's just all four of them should give themselves a pat in the back because they're amazing additions to the league.
yeah, I think all four deserve a nod as well. And it is so refreshing as commissioners to see that your big. We had four new guys and they fit in like a glove. You would never know they're rookies based on their attitude, how well they gel with the rest of the league, how well they gel with their teams. And I think I speak for all three of us when I say, as commissioners, we're very happy to have them. I almost wish we added them earlier. But yeah, Jack Curtin was definitely a big takeaway from week one. Just him being out there, just the way he's able to spread the floor, whether he's scoring, defending, passing, rebounding. He's just an athletic monster. And because he's so quick, he deserves so much defensive attention, which also opens up opportunities for scoring with his teammates. So I think the Hanamos are going to have a really hot year. I do want to zoom in on the Spartans and Galaxy game. Obviously, the Spartans were very shorthanded in their game against the Galaxy, but they kept it really close, courtesy of Prentice and Beraldi, the bottom two guys. Now, I want to ask you, I think I asked you when we filmed this, but I'm going to ask you again for the fans at home who weren't fortunate enough to tune into the game. Uh, did that speak more volumes about the Galaxy? Not necessarily struggling, but allowing the Spartans to be alive late in the game and close and almost come back? Or does it speak more to the Spartans, their heart, their drive, your two bottom players who are, kept a really good attitude, played well, both of them, and were able to maintain some life in that game?
I think it speaks far more about the Spartans. I think with the Galaxy, it was a case of they're up big towards the end of the game. They're playing a team that's missing their captain and their first round pick. I think they let their foot off the gas as that's just naturally what happens in basketball. When you have a big lead, you start feeling comfortable. Just instinctually, you're going to let up just a little bit. And I think that's what happened. But really, I think the bigger takeaway was the Spartans and just showing their fight. And Baraldi and Campbell are very gritty players. They're going to get in the trenches. They're going to do their thing, and that adds up. Neither of them are the most talented in the league, even though Campbell's up there for most talented of the draft pool. But they're both gritty players. They both have a lot of fight, and they didn't care what the score was. They just wanted to come out and show that hey, we're missing our cats, we're missing our first round pick, but we're gonna bust our ass and do what we can. And when we get those guys in, we're gonna be just fine. And that's what they showed. And clearly in week 2, which I'm not gonna dive into now, but they did prove to be just fine when they got their players.
Absolutely. Let's quickly hop into the Hellkites versus Vikings. The Hellkites, obviously came out on top, 22-17. Rishi Srinivasan, who has played, but I think his ASL debut was what in 2019, 2018. It was the first
Yeah,
summer league.
he was captain of Cookies and Cream for the 2018 summer
Yes,
league.
2018. And he obviously came out with a bang, 11 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 0 blocks, and a turnover, leading his very defensive heavy team to a victory over arguably one of the best offensive captains in the league, Colin Kirkpatrick. So, what does that say about the Hellkites? And at the end of week 1, forgetting week 2 at the moment, do you think the Vikings, what adjustments do you think the Vikings had to make? And what do the Hellkites have to do to maintain kind of this fire they have under their ass right now?
Yes, I'm just gonna give a full disclaimer. I have not watched that game, so I can only give so much insight in terms of what I saw in the stats. But the Hellkites, you have Rishi, who hasn't played in the ASL since 2018. Dennis only has 1 season under his belt. Alex Trottier is a rookie, and Pete has had tough luck in terms of playing time and injuries. So really, it's a team that does not have a lot of experience, and you never would have been able to know it. They clearly gelled together. They all did their part, and yeah, just that they're with Rishi's perimeter defense and Dennis and Dennis and Trottier can kind of defend everywhere. Pete's a good interior defender. Really, that is just it's going to be tough to score on that team, and the fact that they were able to do it at the offensive end too, it's scary for the rest of the league. And I
Yeah.
guess in terms of the Vikings, I mean, whatever, I don't know. All I can say is they figured it out week 2. So,
In terms of my take, in terms
what
of
are
the
your thoughts?
Vikings,
Did you see that game? The
I didn't
Hellkites
see it too
Vikings
well, but
game?
I mean, in between the peaks and looking at the stat sheet, it looked like that everyone's, I want to say, critiques of the Vikings as a roster did come to life in week 1 in terms of the offense was going to have to, the offensive lifeline was going to be Collins' lifeline, meaning he had to drop a lot of points for them to get to 21. And he had 13 points. Clark had 2. Boris and Hale each had one apiece. And that was obviously, it had to be the Collins show, and it wasn't the Collins show enough in week 1. He had 16 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, 1 block, and 3 turnovers. Actually, they were a very turnover heavy team that week. Obviously, they figured it out in week 2, and we'll get to that later. But it's great to see that they made adjustments because everyone's assumptions of them formulated as a roster, it appeared to be right in terms of offensively. Shout out to Alex Trottier. I said you're going to be the decoy, and it's looking promising after week 1 at this moment. So keep it up. And no, obviously no spike to Dennis, but you're on the same team as the reigning decoy. So to out decoy the reigning decoy on your team is incredibly hard to do. So definitely got to give the nod to Alex Trotter. You're there.
I have a quick
Uh,
Trot take to throw out there. I
okay.
think Alex Trottier is the
What's your Trot
player.
take?
Yeah, I think he's the player in the draft pool with the least weaknesses to his game. I can't think of one thing on the court that he can't do. Obviously, he excels at certain things, but I just can't think of a weakness to his game,
He's
which
not a
is really
liability.
to say
I
about
see what
Cap.
you mean.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
I like that. We'll have to let that marinate. Pride in the pack. Mike, I think you and I have to address the elephant in the room. Michael and I have made a lapse of judgment. This is our formal apology video. Um, Obviously, the Pack were granted a player whose caliber was transcendent of not only the player he was supposed to replace, but rather the entire ASL as a whole. We were He was pitched to us. He came up from the G League, so he was a member of the Dogs. He was the Dogs captain, and his he was pitched to us as a 16-year-old kid who plays JV. I don't know what they got over there at the end of our high school basketball program, but if that kid is on JV, I don't even want to see the varsity team because he was disgusting to say the least. To go toe to toe with Stephen Shaw takes balls and takes skill, and he did that. So hopefully we don't run into this problem again. We will do a better job of betting our G League. And yeah, Mike, what do you got to say about that?
Yeah, so yeah, we clearly, we created this G League. We were very excited about the new system. It's like, oh my god, we finally get to use one of their affiliates, call them up. They were missing their first and second round pick, and we thought, okay, a 16-year-old on JV. We have so many kids who have played high level varsity. Steve Shaw is the best player in ASL history. Like and again, not that we pick subs based on their competition, but we didn't realize what we were getting ourselves into. It was something we're gonna have to learn from. I guess the only positive is that it was Steven Shaw's team that went against it, and not because anything against Steven Shaw, not anything against his team, but we know that he's going to be just fine. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end, yeah,
Exactly.
it was a mistake, and we will not let it happen again. Whether we make a regulation that it has to be no G League captains or whatever, we have to watch them play. We won't let it happen again. We messed up, and just glad it happened week one, and not at a more pivotal time.
Absolutely. And then, we got to talk about it. Pretty sour. Week one, Billies versus the Hanamotos. We already kind of touched on Jack Curtin, BR, both of our week one MVPs, but we didn't talk about the game as a whole. Dive in. What are you thinking? And give it from an honest, neutral perspective, not as Michael Goldsmith, a Billies
Of
player.
course, that's what we do here in Analyst
That's
Hour.
what we do. We're analysts.
Um,
We have our analyst caps on.
um, Well, so the Hatamotos jumped out to an 11-2 halftime lead, which I
Which
don't know if
has
that's
to
ever
be the
happened.
biggest.
I don't know
That's
if
got
it's
to
the
be the
biggest
biggest halftime
halftime lead in
deficit.
ASL history, but it's definitely up there. And it was hard. It was at that point there was no going back for them. As I said, Jack Curtin, he's never played in the ASL before. I'd only seen him play one pickup game. I don't know how much you guys have seen him play, but no one really knew what to expect from Curtin entirely. Carter was swarming the glass, and at nights with it being like a much narrower court, it really serves Carter well as for what he does is just an old school traditional big man that can't camps the paint, guards the interior, gets rebounds. That's just perfect for Carter. And even Cole. Cole had a few big shots as well. So they were a well-oiled machine. The Billies did go on a run. They did make it. I'm not gonna say we. They did make it close at one point. They went on a good run. They showed they had something, but I mean, if a team's gonna start that hot, there's not much you're gonna do. And the Hatamotos so far appeared. I granted both the Hatamotos and Hellkites are 1-0, but I do believe that the Hatamotos are the team to beat in the Eastern Conference.
I see. Looking at that game, yeah, right out of the gate, Hanamotos, pedal to the metal, top gear for sure. 11-2. I don't know many teams who can come back from that deficit, and we still don't know one because the Billies obviously lost. I have the stats in front of me. Jack Curtin again, even though he put up great numbers, I really don't think the numbers did him justice in terms of his overall impact in the game. You really got the sense of when he was just his presence and whether he had the ball and was moving really quickly and accelerating, stretching the floor that way, or when he was off ball, he was never standing still, never watched the game, never let the game come to him. He was so engaged with every single second of that game, which not only helps him, his team, but also individual players' performances on his team as well. Uh, so he so yeah, I mean, I got really nothing else to say there. He did put up 4 steals, 1 block, which is an incredible combination of that five, you know, between steals and blocks, like defensive pillar right there. He carried his team in every single statistic, and that's not despite his other teammates, but his Carter had a great game, just slightly worse than him, but a great game nonetheless. And then when it comes to the Billies, really flat outing, really, really flat outing, especially right away. You can't go down that early and because you're chasing the game at that point. You're chasing the game, you're chasing the other team, and your possession becomes that much more valuable because you have to keep it and maintain it and scoring, and you have to be super efficient. No missed shots at that point, and that's what ended up happening. Not to mention, I believe the Billies led the league and tied for the Vikings in leading the league in turnovers. You had Cadigan with 4, Zelansky with 2, Regan with 1, Goldsmith with 0. Um, so they had 7 turnovers that week, and I brought this up to Ryan just to hear his opinion as a friend. Now I get to ask you as an analyst and for everyone to hear because we talk about this year being huge on legacy, and obviously Steven Shaw is sitting pretty at the goat right now. He's got 2 rings. He had a clean sweep last year, but we always include Ryan in that conversation pretty loosely in terms of the big 3. And some people say Ryan is the third. Some people say Connor Fu is the third with his individual accolades. The one thing holding Connor Fu back is that ring. Um, if and obviously we'll say everything in a vacuum right now. The Billies are 0-2. They are last in their division. They're the only team that's 0-2. If Ryan Cadigan doesn't make the playoffs or is even a first round exit, does that flush his legacy away?
I'd say flush away is very strong, but it's definitely it would yeah, huge damage would be done.
He
I
would
mean,
be. Would you
granted,
say he'd be excluded from the GOAT conversation for good?
you can't say for good because we don't know about future seasons, but at the end of the season, you cannot bring his name up in that conversation anymore. It's kind of like what happened to Ian. Like Ian just has had he was the goat for the first 3 or 4 seasons, and he just hasn't had that success in such a long time, and his name is no longer in that conversation. He's still an ASL great, but and I think Ryan's always going to be an ASL great. But in terms of even like being for your name being mentioned in the same breath as Steven Shaw, you can't miss the playoffs 2 years in a row or for a first round exit. So
Yeah, I mean,
it's
last year definitely was definitely an asterisk, but I know what you mean.
yeah, it's a stain. It's a stain. It's not totally tarnished, but it is a stain. But what do you think?
How about this? Well, I think here's
Yeah,
what I'll say. I think if he doesn't miss the playoffs, there's now a second tier goat. Like the first tier goats, you're going to talk about Colin and Steven, and then after you finish that conversation, that debate, you're going to get into the Connors and the Ryans. However, if Ryan doesn't make playoffs or is a first round exit, and Connor Fu excels or maybe gets another MVP, I think it is a valid take to put Connor as a higher um, tier GOAT than Ryan.
yeah, I'd say that's
I mean,
fair.
I think that's a valid take. Obviously, we have to see how the season
Hard to
plays
argue.
out. Exactly, because the only thing Connor's missing on his resume is that team accolade.
Hmm.
He has all the individual ones. Um, Now, this was brought up to me, so I can't take credit for this idea if you like it, but also if you don't like it, you can't get mad at me because it's not my idea. But I was talking about GOAT status and Steven Shaw with another ASL player, and they said that if Steven doesn't win this year and it goes to say anyone else, really,
Hmm.
especially if it's a repeating winner like a Ryan or a Colin, does Steven's first year as a captain, aka Lob City, where he gave up on his team, come back to haunt him and tarnish his legacy if, say, Colin or Ryan, a repeating winner, were to come back and win a ring? And if it was Ryan or Connor, I'm sorry, Ryan or Colin, they would pretty much have to beat Steven Shaw. If it's fair to assume he's the favorite to come out of the West or the East,
See,
whatever.
here's what's funny is I think let's say Steve Shaw like lost Connor Fu in the conference finals and then Ryan beat Connor Fu in the finals. I think Steve Shaw is still the GOAT because he has 2 rings, so does Ryan, but Ryan didn't beat him. But if Steven actually made the finals and lost to Ryan in the finals, Ryan's
Or
probably
Colin.
the GOAT. Does that make or Colin exactly? That either of those players are probably the goat because they have the same amount of rings, and the only time they faced off in the finals, they won. So it's all in a way his legacy. In a weird way, he could be served better if he loses in the conference finals than if he loses in the finals to either of them. But Yeah, right. It's gonna be hard for him to his no matter what he's in the conversation, no matter what he's top two.
So
It's just
you're saying his first season would come back and haunt him
no, I
if he
know it's not even
loses?
because of his first season. As honestly, I think his first season helps it helps his goat status because he had that first season. He came back to the league. He's and now he's the best player in the league and he's run the league 2 years in a row. And honestly, it's a redemption story. If anything, it like it's not like it's like a bonus, but like it makes it looks good. You know, he
Steven
messed
Shaw, the
up.
true underdog story.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, he was on 0-4 Lob City, and the team fell apart. And look at him now. He runs the league. He's the undisputed goat. So I really don't even think that has much impact on his legacy either way at this point. But
I think
lose,
the only way that Steven could be dethroned as the GOAT is if Colin or Ryan beat him in the finals and have a clean sweep. MVP, championship, finals MVP. I think if like Steven wins the MVP and then loses in the finals, he's safe. Or if Connor wins the MVP and Steven loses in the finals, he's safe. I think Colin or Ryan would have to do a clean sweep and beat Steven in the finals, which has to be one of the hardest journeys you can do in the ASL in order to dethrone Steven as the ASL GOAT.
yeah,
Agree or disagree?
agreed. Easier said than done, obviously.
Obviously. All right, now we're going to go into week two. Only two games have been played at this very moment, but we got to talk into them. First one at the top of my sheet, Vikings, Phillies.
Oof, damn, we're doing this one.
I got to hop in, and I'm going to say this
No,
because if I
go.
would say the same thing that wasn't on my team, it is time for the Billies to worry. Andrew Regan as a Billy is not worried, but as a third party and as an analyst, it is time for the Billies to worry. They have not only lost 2 weeks in a row, they have zero offense. They have not put up any numbers. Zero. Actually, let me see their first week. What they lose? They
It's like
lost
22.
14. So they put up 24 points in 2 weeks. That is an atrocious stat. And they're losing, and it looks like they have not figured it out. Something needs to change in order for the Billies to light a fire under their ass. Whatever's going on right now in the Billies is not working. It must be fixed. They have a good team. There's no doubt they have a good team, player to player to player to player. But them as a system, it's not working. It's broken. It needs to be fixed. Blow it up. New ideas. It is time to worry if you are a Billy or a Billies fan. Vikings absolutely turned it around from week one. I don't think Collins ever lost to Ryan in the ASL. You'll have to fact check me on that. So it was another day at the office for him. 11 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 0 turnovers. He's obviously the primary ball handler. He's the primary scorer. He's the primary defender, the primary facilitator. This guy did it all. He had an MVP week. And if we were to do MVP today, he's got to be talked about. However, with that said, my X factor for the Vikings versus Billies is none other than AJ Clark. Every player in the ASL, regardless of your skill, has to look at AJ Clark as him as a teammate and just an overall player. He is always active, just like Jack Curtin. Mike, you flip your phone?
Yeah, yes, of course.
He's always active. He engages it. He does what he wants. He makes the best with every play. The kid floods the paint after every shot. He knows when to set picks. He knows how to read the game. Uh, and again, I'm not shitting on AJ Clark as an athlete or a basketball player, but it shows that you don't need to necessarily have the handling or the speed or the overall basketball skill and technique to flourish in this league. So everyone needs to look at AJ Clark and his ability to play and succeed in this game. Kimboris absolutely did his job, 1.5 rebounds, 1 assist, and Ian Hale put up a great stat line. Although it's hurting his fourth man eligibility because he did start in this one. But Ian, 2 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and no turnovers for him. So he did an incredible job. Hats off to the Vikings. They needed to come back win, and they did it. Mike, your thoughts?
I think you covered everything really well. I would just say one thing that also should add to the Billies' panic meter is that not only do they lose those first 2 games in humiliating fashion, those are 2 division games. Those are 2 division games. Not only your own 2, those 2 teams that beat you have the tiebreaker on you for the rest of the season. So that yeah, the panic meter has got to be raising for the Billies. But yeah, I mean, AJ Clark showed that he might be the highest IQ basketball player in the ASL, captain or non-captain. Just watching that game, and because it was my game, I revisited it and watched even more in depth. It was just AJ. He's just always the right place at the right time. Always knows what to do. Just knows how to use his body and his size so beautifully. It's great to see as a basketball fan. Um,
Can I say
uh,
this? This is going to be my quote. I might put this on the Instagram. Every single step or move that AJ Clark made was meticulous and had a purpose. There was not one nonchalant step made for him. Every single move, every time he put himself in motion, it had a purpose. And it was honestly such a beautiful basketball performance by him.
I mean, yeah, what you saw in that game was an offense that had a scheme, knew exactly what they were going to do, went in with a good game plan versus a dormant offense that had no idea what they were doing and were just setting picks for the sake of setting picks, spacing for the set of space for this point of spacing instead of actually going in with a scheme, a game plan. It was a mess. So for the Billies, and it was just as incredible in the other one, and for the Vikings. But I think you covered it really well. Besides that.
Thank you. We'll talk about the Spartans versus Pack. It was a Spartans redemption game. They showed out. I don't think the stats are right, so we're gonna have to revisit that. It's not adding up, but we can just talk about it in general. Resendez and Chowdhury showed that they are a very good duo. They both understand the game and they both understand each other, which is very important. Prentice and Baraldi, another great performance from the bottom half of the team. This is probably the most in-depth team we have in the ASL in terms of individual performance. Baraldi makes the most out of all of his minutes. Prentice is really embodied his role perfectly, where he is such a presence out there, but he doesn't take away from the other players surrounding him, with whether it be Resendez or Chowdhury or Baraldi in there as well. So hats off to them. They're gonna have to be. I'm not really worried about the Spartans if I'm a Spartans fan. Uh, doesn't definitely seems like they're going to coast and do a good job. Pack can't say the same. They had their bottom 2 players, Nunez and Bollinger. I thought Nunez did a great job leading towards the second half of that game and staying in it as well. He was shooting well from beyond the arc, got in a little turnover trouble towards the end, but nonetheless, he was rebounding, he was scoring, and he had 3 steals and 1 rebound. So I'm sorry, 3 steals and 1 block. So good job for Arvin. Bollinger is still showing a little timidness offensively. He's still a body and horse getting those rebounds, but I would love to see him be more aggressive offensively. And he gets a lot of he has a wastes a lot of second chance points by passing out. And if whether he just gets it, kind of looks around quickly, puts it up. I see a lot of hesitation in his offensive game, and I don't want to see that going forward because I know he has the ability to make a greater impact when it comes to scoring than he does. Other than that, though, you know what you're getting when you're drafting him, and he flourishes in his role. But overall, I just want to see him put in a little bit more. I don't want to say bravery or like have more courage, but
More
I want
aggression,
to see him
aggression.
aggression, be more aggressive out there when it comes to scoring.
Yep. Yeah, I would again. I agree with basically everything you said, but I think one thing you missed that cannot be understated was Spartans captain Nick Resendez subbing himself out at halftime.
Dude,
Incre-
chills.
Incredible on so many levels. Not just being willing to do that, not just showing you have no ego. Beyond all that, like that was incredible itself. But when he subbed himself out, that is the hardest I've seen a team play all season. With Ian, Campbell, and Tyler, they were busting their ass. They're like, oh shit, we're gonna have to do this on our own. We don't have a captain level talent on the floor. They busted their ass, and sure enough, they went on a big run. So and obviously morale's up. Obviously, Baraldi now knows, and Baraldi played incredible, and now he knows his captain has the faith in him to bench himself for him in the first half. That's got to feel that's as a fourth man. I can say that's all you can ask for is knowing that your captain believes in you and wants you on the floor. So that's got to be an incredible feeling for Baraldi, and that's got to raise the chemistry and morale going forward. It is so much deeper than just him sitting a few minutes in the first half. Just incredible move all around. It was awesome to see. I wonder if it'll encourage more captains to do that. Probably not, but shout out Nick Resendez.
Yeah,
He
he
was
deserves a
incredible.
Medal of Honor for that one. He does
Yeah,
deserve to be knighted. That was moving. That was
and
emotional.
yeah. Yeah, I think the Spartans are also going to be really good. All four of them played their roles to a T. They all did perfect. So to them, and the thing about the Pack is they are the hardest team to read in the league right now because they had week one they had some 16-year-old god come in and carry them to a win. And week two they're missing their captain, their first round pick, and they had to get a last second sub. And by the way, Brandon great. He showed a lot of effort.
Mhm.
He was perfect. Like it's hard when you're being asked to fill the shoes of your team's two top players. You've never even been in this league before. Brand was a good sub.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day,
Well,
I
I
have
hope to
no
see
idea
more
what.
of him.
Yeah, I have no idea what to think about the pack, and I don't think if you have any conclusions about the pack, then you're wrong. Like you have to wait and see them. So, but yeah, the Spartans are a well-oiled machine, and shout out Nick Resendez.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we'll just try to jump into this last quick segment of what do you think some overall projections, nothing specific about the league as a whole. So I can start off as one right now.
Mhm.
Um, I think Vikings are a playoff lock. I know people were kind of hating on the Vikings, but I think they're a playoff lock, and they really have nothing to worry about, showing that how well they work together. Um, in terms of the other conference, I, on your pack point, I'm excited to see them play, but we're now 3 weeks in, and for them, never mind two. Um, oh, for them will be 3 weeks. Never mind. For them will be 3 weeks. They're going into the doubleheader, not playing as a full team yet, so I think they're going to struggle.
Mm. Yep. So yeah, I agree. The Vikings clearly. I mean, I know the first analyst hour, I did say I don't think I thought they would miss the playoffs. I'm wrong. They're probably going to make the playoffs. I'd say my prediction for the East. I think not only will Jack Curtin win Rookie of the Year, but he's going to win MVP because
Wow.
I think that this is in part because when you're Steven Shaw and you have a player like Costa in your team, and Costa had a horrendous first game, but I do not expect to see that again from if he assuming he shows up. I do not expect to see that again from Costa, and that Steve Shaw's never had a pure scorer on his team. So I think that's really going to hurt his MVP campaign. You see Jack Curtin lead his team in stats, and not only to lead his team in every statistical category, but his intangibles were incredible too. I mean, just his awareness, his IQ, his communication, even he's just so he's I think he is going to be up there. If he doesn't win MVP, he's going to be nominated. But I honestly think he's going to win. And in terms of the West, kind of similar to you, I would be shocked if the Pack make the playoffs. And I'm going to take it one step further. I think that trade Iron for Sarang will go down as the worst trade in ASL history. And it has nothing to do with Sarang at all. Like, respect to Rang. Rang is an elite 3-point shooter. He brings the team. But I think the Pack are in trouble because, I mean, like, Alex is he's going to have to put that team on his back. I know you can argue, oh, Arvin can score, Sarang can score. But when you look at the rest of the West, after seeing that the Spartans are a well-oiled machine, the Galaxy beat the Spartans, the pride of Steve Shaw, they are in a tough conference. They haven't even had one game, as you said. Continuity is underrated in the ASL. They haven't had one game full strength. I think they might be the only team, even though they played 2 games, to not have their team full strength yet. That can be fact checked, but I'm pretty sure that's true. Yeah, I fear for them, and it doesn't have to. And they have 4 quality players, but they're in a tough conference. Their availability is hurt, and I fear for their versatility on offense. I guess I don't know. I'd be very surprised. And if you're on the Pack and you're listening to this, prove me wrong, please be my guest. But I don't see them qualifying for the playoffs.
All right, noted. Now we got to go into a more serious note. There unfortunately has been a trend within these past 2 weeks that we have seen that hasn't been a trend before, and we want to nip it in the bud now. So we will have to unfortunately update not like the rules, but like the standards. We've had a lot of people come to us and complain about. God, I hate laughing, but it is kind of funny. The constant rescheduling and an unwillingness to have a sub, or if three guys can make it, but a captain can't show up, or three guys can make it and your second best player can't show up. So you reschedule and you kind of wherever the whole league's in limbo when everyone's kind of juggling around and we try to get subs for the people and the G League isn't available because it's such short notice. So I'm kind of rambling, but we are inducting this new, yeah, I guess rule um, because we've seen too many players and they're not captains, and they're probably not the second best players either. So your third roundies and your fourth men, who are willing to show up every Sunday and have planned for this because this has been the schedule for a long time, be ready to go on Sunday. But because their first round pick can't show up, the captain wants to reschedule, which at first was fine, but unfortunately, it's become a trend where it's not fine anymore. And then these people can't even make it to the reschedule date, and because they have work or life. So we are going to be cracking down starting next week. Nothing's going to happen this week because that wouldn't be fair to you guys. But starting at the doubleheader and going forward, if your team has three available players, regardless of who it is, you are playing. You are playing that Sunday. Uh, this isn't anything new. Has been the standard for as long as ASL has been a thing. It's why we have four guys to a team, because if you have three guys can show up and one guy can't, it's not a clusterfuck. So if you have three guys can show up regardless of who it is, you show up. If you have only two guys show up, we will give you a sub. And what was the other thing we talked about, Mike? When can you reschedule? If I'm a player, if I'm a captain right now, I want to know. All right, fine. When can I reschedule?
Yeah. If you're well, so yeah, as we said, if both teams have 3 players or more, there's no rescheduling. Um, but yeah, if one of the teams is missing, I don't know, if they're missing 2 players and we can't find an adequate sub or a sub that'd be fair, a sub that both teams can be happy with, that's when you really have to start looking at it. But the goal is still to find a sub and get it played on Sunday. But if we can't find an adequate replacement, if because we still have to, look into this whole G League thing. And by the way, we will have more clarity on this once the G League starts playing, which is Friday the 23rd. So we're gonna have a lot more clarity on all their skill levels. But yeah, the goal is to find a sub. If we can't find one, and one or both teams are missing 2 players, then you got to look at rescheduling.
Yes, we'll reschedule for that following week. If you can't get it done by the following Sunday, meaning you have the option to play another doubleheader the following Sunday. So let's say week four, Michael and I are opposing captains, and we have to reschedule because we couldn't find a sub in time. We have that following week, so Monday through Saturday to play, or we could do a doubleheader that next Sunday. And if it isn't played then, it is a draw for both teams. And here's another thing: if Michael and I realize that we can't get a sub and we have to reschedule, pick a date that day. And that goes to everyone. You need to communicate with your teams to make it easier. It's not fair to everyone if they want to get a game in and you're not looking at your phone or whatever. Like, come on, let's be adults. Let's handle this adequately and efficiently. But again, this isn't really a new rule, but again, it's the new standard. This is what it's always been. And maybe it wouldn't have played out the way we are fearing it's going to play out, where everyone's rescheduling and everything's up in the air. Maybe it was just kind of the first few weeks, everyone's adjusting back into summer, maybe starting new jobs, graduating. But again, we want to reiterate this now because we definitely don't want to see it get worse down the line. With that said, we do want to give you freedoms to play the game at your full strength. At your full strength. So we definitely want you to do that first. But again, if you have three guys to a team you're playing, and Mike, as a fourth man, you should speak on behalf of the fourth men on what that would mean to them and getting their
Yeah,
minutes
well,
in when they can show up. First of all, fourth men are usually the most attending players.
yeah, the fourth men have long gotten the short end of the stick, and maybe that's my fault as a commissioner and a fourth man for not representing us well. But yeah, like they're just I haven't been a victim of it, but if you're just to put yourself in the shoes of those who have been victims, you're a fourth man. The game could be played hypothetically on a Sunday. Both teams would have 3 players, but either your team or the other team's best player can't make it, and they want to reschedule. And now they reschedule to date that you can't make it. We paid 50. Everyone paid $50, and we all agreed on Sundays at 5. And if it needs to be rescheduled for certain reasons, because we for actual availability issues, that is fine. But if the game can be played, if there are 3 eligible players on both teams and it's not being played because you don't have the players you want out there, you are screwing over someone who has cleared time on their schedule. Some people have told their work not to give them Sundays, and they paid 50 for this, and then they actually you rescheduled the following Thursday. They're working the following Thursday. That is so unfair. So that can't be
And
happening anymore.
and I got to hop in here, and I'm talking to the captains here. Like, we do a draft to give you the freedom to pick the players that you want to play with, the players that you think are going to make your team good and succeed. So if you can't make it to a game, you should have full fledged faith in your team to play it out and represent you in your absence because you drafted them, you wanted them. So it also underlies it also shows the importance of drafting a good team, an in-depth team. So again, not that I'm saying the captains have really been the issue of this. It makes total sense to want to put your best players out there at a good time, but obviously the schedule is losing its stability. Like I said, I don't know if it's going to be a trend for the rest of the season, but we want to nip it in the bud now, address it, reiterate. Um, Other than that, fun is the number one rule and safety. So, um,
Just
Mike,
one last thing. One last thing. Just
yeah.
gonna throw it there. We're not. By the way, I'm not trying to paint any captains as villains here. Like it's on us
Oh
for
no, no,
enabling it.
no.
This is on us for enabling it, and that's why we're putting the clamps down on it. But this is no one's fault. So I just want to throw that out there.
Exactly. No one's fault
This
but
isn't
our
like
own.
we're saying blaming someone without saying their name. There's no one we have in mind that we're blaming. It's on us. We enabled it for too long, and that's why we're putting a stop to it. That's all I want to throw out there.
Exactly. Shout out to Michael for actually bringing this to my attention because I would get a few texts or calls and uh, and be like, "Hey, we want to reschedule," and I would always say, "Okay, cool. Let me know what it is." I would never think of the implication or the situation. So shout out to Michael for bringing this to my attention. Um, because he's right, it is our fault, and we are not talking about anyone in particular. So thank you for stating that, Michael, because that is truly the case. Um, this is more on us than anyone else, but thank you for your compliance going forward, and I promise you the league will run better that way. That's all we have. Thank you for tuning in. We will get another episode out before the doubleheader weekend because that is going to be huge. And if it could be extreme good or extreme bad, that could really paint the playoff picture going forward. So stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in. We love you guys. Signing off.